Okay guys, so my video cut out, so sometimes my laptop, when I film on my laptop, it doesn't quite work, so it's, yes, a bit irritating. So where we left off last time, I'm going to explain, because it cut off sort of in the middle of a sentence. It was essentially Hagrid explaining to Harry about how Gringotts is guarded by dragons, and that the dragons could kill you if you tried to rob it, so that's why you would never bother to rob Gringotts. So we're going to jump in now and start from the next paragraph. Harry sat and thought about this while Hagrid read his newspaper, The Daily Prophet. Harry had learnt from Uncle Vernon that people liked to be left alone when they did this, but it was very difficult. He'd never had so many questions in his life. Ministry of Magic messing things up as usual, Hagrid muttered under the page. Turning the page, sorry. There's a Ministry of Magic? Harry asked before he could stop himself. Course, said Hagrid. They want Dumbledore for minister at course, but he never leave a Grot's foot, so old Cornelius Fudge got a job. Bungler if there ever was one. So he pelts Dumbledore with owls every morning asking for advice. What does the Ministry of Magic do? Well, their main job is keeping it from muggles so there's still witches and wizards up down country. Why? Why? Blimey, Harry, everyone would be wanting magical solutions to their problems. Nah, we're best left alone. At this moment, the boat bumped gently into the harbour wall. Hagrid folded up his newspaper and they clambered onto the stones onto the street. Passersby stared a lot at Hagrid as they walked through the little town to the station. Harry couldn't blame them. Not only was Hagrid twice as tall as anyone else you'd ever seen, he kept pointing at perfectly ordinary things, like parking meters, and saying loudly, "See, Harry, these things muggles dream up, eh?" Hagrid, said Harry, panting as he ran to keep up. Did you say there were dragons at Gringotts? Well, they say so, said Hagrid. Crikey, I'd like a dragon. You'd like one? Wanted one ever since I was a kid. Here we go. They reached the station. There was a train to London in 5 minutes' time. Hagrid, who didn't understand muggle money, as he called it, gave the notes to Harry so he could buy their tickets. People stared more than ever on the train. Hagrid took up 2 seats and sat knitting what looked like a canary yellow circus tent. Still got your letter, Harry? He asked as he counted the stitches. Harry took the parchment of the envelope of his pocket. Good, there's a list of everything you need. Harry unfolded the second piece of paper he hadn't noticed the night before and read it. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Uniform. First years will require 1. 3 sets planes of black... Sorry guys, I'll start again. 1. 3 sets of plain work robes, black. 2. 1 plain pointed hat, black fur daywear. 3. 1 pair of protective gloves, dragon hide or similar. 4. 1 winter coat, black, silver fastenings. Please note that all people's clothes should carry name tags. Set books. All students should have a copy of each of the following. The Standard Book of Spells, Grade 1, by Miranda Goshawk. A History of Magic by Bathilda Bagshot. Magic Theory by Adalbert Waffling. A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration by Emmerich Switch. 1000 Magical Herbs and Fungi by Philodina Spore. Magical Drafts and Potions by Arsenius Jigger. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, you might recognise the name of that one, by Newt Scamander, and The Dark Forces, A Guide to Self-Protection by Quinton Timble. Other equipment. 1 wand, 1 cauldron, pewter, standard size 2, 1 set of glass or crystal phials, 1 telescope, and 1 brass scale. Students may bring an owl or a cat or a toad. Parents are reminded that first years are not allowed their own broomsticks. Can we buy all of this in London? Harry wondered aloud. If you know where to go, said Hagrid. Harry had never been to London before. Although Hagrid seemed to know where he was going, he was obviously not used to getting there in an ordinary way. He got stuck in the ticket barrier in the underground and complained loudly that the seats were too small and that the trains were too slow. I don't know how muggles manage without magic, he said as they climbed a broken-down escalator which led up to a bustling road lined with shops. Hagrid was so huge that he parted the crowds easily. All Harry had to do was keep close behind him. They passed bookshops and music stores and hamburger bars and cinemas, but nowhere that looked as if he would sell you a magic wand. There was just an ordinary street full of ordinary people. Could there really be piles of wizards of gold buried miles beneath them? Was there really shops that sold spellbooks and brooms? Might this have not all been some huge joke that the Dursleys had cooked up? If Harry hadn't known that the Dursley had no sense of humour, he might have thought so. Yet somehow, even though everything Hagrid had told him so far was unbelievable, Harry couldn't help trusting him. This is it, said Hagrid, coming to a halt. The Leaky Cauldron. It's a famous place. It was a tiny, grubby-looking pub. If Hagrid hadn't pointed it out, Harry wouldn't have noticed it was there. The people hurrying by didn't glance at it. Their eyes slid from the big bookshop on the one side to the record shop on the other, as if they couldn't see the Leaky Cauldron at all. In fact, Harry had the most peculiar feeling that only he and Hagrid could see it. Before he could mention this, Hagrid had steered him inside. For a famous place, it was very dark and shabby. A few old women were sitting in a corner, drinking tiny glasses of sherry. One of them was smoking a long pipe. A little man in a top hat was talking to the old barman, who was quite bald and looking like a gummy walnut. The low buzz of chatter stopped when they walked in. Everyone seemed to know Hagrid. They waved and smiled at him, and the barman reached for a glass, saying, "Usual, Hagrid?" "Can't, Tom. I'm on Hogwarts business," said Hagrid, clapping his great hand on Harry's shoulder, making Harry's knees buckle. "Good Lord," said the barman, peering at Harry. Can this be? The Leaky Cauldron had suddenly gone completely still and silent. "Bless my soul," whispered the old barman. "Harry Potter. What an honour!" He hurried out from behind the bar, rushed towards Harry, seized his hands, tears in his eyes. "Welcome back, Mr. Potter, welcome back!" Harry didn't know what to say. Everyone was looking at him. The old woman with a pipe was puffing on it without realising it had gone out. Hagrid was beaming. Then there was a great scraping of chairs, and the next moment Harry found himself shaking hands with everyone in the Leaky Cauldron. "Doris Crockford, Mr. Potter, I can't believe I'm meeting you at last!" "So proud, Mr. Potter, so proud!" "Always wanted to shake your hand. I'm all of a flutter." "Delighted, Mr. Potter. I just can't tell you. Diggle's the name. Delorious Diggle." "I've seen you before," said Harry, as did Glorious Diggle. Top hat fell off in his excitement. "You bowed to me once in a shop." "He remembers!" cried the Glorious Diggle, looking around at everyone. "Did you hear that? He remembers me!" Harry shook hands again and again. Doris Crockford kept coming back for more. A pale young man made his way forward very nervously, one of his eyes twitching. "Professor Quirrell," said Hagrid. "Harry's Professor Quirrell. Professor Quirrell will be one of your teachers at Hogwarts." "Potter," stammered Professor Quirrell, grasping Harry's hand. "Can't tell you how pleased I am to meet you." "What sort of magic do you teach, Professor Quirrell?" "Defence against the dark arts," muttered Professor Quirrell, as though he'd rather not think about it. "Not that you need Potter?" He laughed nervously. "You'll be getting all your equipment, I suppose. I've got to pick up a new book on vampires myself." He looked terrified at the very thought. But the others wouldn't let Professor Quirrell keep Harry to himself. It almost took 10 minutes to get him away from them. At last, Hagrid managed to make himself heard over the babble. "Must get on, lots to buy. Come on, Harry." 1 second, guys. Just need to sneeze and blow my nose. And again, it's hay fever still. Like I keep, like every time I tell you when I have my little sneezing fits. And unfortunately, I don't have a editing software, so I have to do it all in one take. Doris Crockford shook Harry's hand one last time, and Hagrid led them through the bar and out onto the small walled courtyard, where there was nothing but a dustbin and a few weeds. Hagrid grinned at Harry. "Told you, didn't I? Told you were famous. Even Professor Quirrell was trembling to meet you. Mind you, he's usually trembling." "Is he always that nervous?" "Oh yeah, poor bloke, brilliant mind. He was fine while he was studying out of books, but then he took a year off to get some first-hand experience. They say he met vampires in the Black Forest, and there was a nasty bit of trouble with a hag. Never been the same since. Scared of the students, scared of his own subject now. Where's my umbrella?" Vampires? Hags? Harry's head was swimming. Hagrid, meanwhile, was counting bricks in the wall above the dustbin. 3 up, 2 across. Right, stand back, Harry. He tapped the wall 3 times with the point of his umbrella. The brick he had touched quivered. It wiggled in the middle, and a small hole opened up. It appeared, and it grew wider and wider. A second later, they were facing an archway, large enough even for Hagrid, an archway onto a cobbled street, twisted and turned out of sight. "Welcome, Hagrid." "Welcome," said Hagrid, "to Diagon Alley." He grinned at Harry's amazement. They stepped through the archway. Harry looked quickly over his shoulder and saw the archway shrink instantly back into a solid wall. The sun shone brightly on a stack of cauldrons outside the nearest shop. Cauldrons, all sizes, copper, brass, pewter, silver, self-stirring, collapsible, said the sign, hanging over them. "Yeah, you'll be needing one," said Hagrid. "But we got to get your money first." Harry wished he had about 8 more eyes. He turned his head in every direction as they walked up the street, trying to look at everything at once. The shops, the things outside them, the people doing their shopping. A plump woman outside, an apothecary, was shaking her head as they passed, saying, "Dragon liver, 16 sickles an ounce! They're mad!" A low, soft hooting came from the dark shop with a sign, saying, "Elop's Owl Emporium, tawny, screech, barn, brown and snowy." Several boys about Harry's age had their noses pressed against the window with the brooms in it. "Look," Harry heard one of them say, "it's the new Nimbus 2000, fastest ever." There were shops selling robes, shops selling telescopes and strange silver instruments Harry had never seen before. Windows stacked with barrels of bat spleens and eel's eyes, tottering piles of spellbooks, quills and rolls of parchment, potion bottles and globes of the moon. "Gringotts," said Hagrid. They had reached the snowy white building which towered over the little shops. Standing beside it, burnished bronze doors, wearing a uniform of scarlet and gold, was... "Yeah, that's a goblin," said Hagrid, as they quietly walked up the stone stairs towards him. The goblin was about a head shorter than Harry. He had a swarthy, clever face and a pointed beard, and Harry noticed very long fingers and feet. He bowed at them as they walked inside. Now they were facing a second pair of doors, silver this time, with the words engraved on them. "Enter, stranger, but take heed of what awaits the sin of greed. For those who take but do not earn must pay most dearly in their turn. So if you seek beneath our floors a treasure that was never yours, thief, you have been warned, beware of finding more than treasure there." "Like I said, you'd be mad to try and rob it," said Hagrid. A pair of goblins bowed at them through the silver doors, and they were in the vast marble hall. About 100 more goblins were sitting on the high stools behind them. Long counters scribbling in large ledgers, weighing coins on the brass scales, examining precious stones through eyeglasses. There were too many doors to count leading off the hall, and yet more goblins were showing people in and out of these. Hagrid and Harry made for the counter. "Morning," said Hagrid to a free goblin. "We've come to take some money out of Mr. Potter's safe." "You have his key, sir?" "Got it in here somewhere," said Hagrid, and he started emptying his pockets out to the counter, scattering a handful of mouldy dog biscuits over the goblin's book of numbers. The goblin wrinkled his nose. Harry watched the goblin on their right, weighing a pile of rubies as big as glowing coals. "Got it," said Hagrid at last, holding up a tiny golden key. The goblin looked at it closely. "That seems to be in order." "And I got a letter here from Professor Dumbledore," said Hagrid, importantly throwing out his chest. "It's about you-know-what in Vault 713. The goblin read the letter carefully. "Very well," he said, handing it back to Hagrid. I will have someone take you down to Bulford's." Griphook was yet another goblin. Once Hagrid had crammed all the dog biscuits back inside his pocket. He and Harry followed Griphook towards one of the doors leading off the hall. "What's you-know-what in Vault 713? Harry asked. Can't tell you that, said Hagrid mysteriously. Very secret Hogwarts business. Dumbledore trusted me more than my job's worth to tell you that. Griphook held open the door for them. Harry, who was expected more marble, was surprised. There was a narrow stone passage lit with flaming torches. It sloped steeply downwards, and there were little railway tracks on the floor. Griphook whistled, and a small cart came hurtling up to the track towards them. They climbed in. Hagrid, with some difficulty, and were off. At first they just hurtled through a maze of twisting passages. Harry tried to remember left, right, left, middle, fork, right, left, but it was impossible. The rattling cart seemed to know where it was going on its own because Griphook wasn't steering. Harry's eyes stung as the cold air rushed past them, but he kept them wide open. Once he thought he saw a burst of fire at the end of the passage and twisted around to see if it was a dragon. But too late. They plunged even deeper, passing underground lake where huge stalactites and stalagmites grew from the ceiling and floor. I never know, Harry called to Hagrid over the noise of the cart. What's the difference between a stalagmite and a stalactite? Stalagmite's got an M in it, said Hagrid, and don't ask me questions now. I think I'm going to be sick. He did look very green when the cart stopped at last beside a small door in the passage wall. Hagrid got out, had to lean against the wall to stop his knees trembling. Griphook unlocked the door. A lot of green smoke came billowing out as it cleared. Harry grasped. Inside were mounds of gold coins, columns of silver, heaps of little bronze nuts. All yours, smiled Hagrid. All Harry's? It was incredible. The Dursleys couldn't have known about this, or they'd have had it from him faster than blinking. How often had they complained how much Harry had cost them to keep? And all of this time there had been a small fortune belonging to him buried deep under London. Hagrid helped Harry pile some of it into a bag. The gold ones are gallons, he said. 17 silver sickles to a gallon and 29 nuts to a sickle. It's easy enough. Right. That should be enough for a couple of terms. We'll keep the rest in the safe for you. He turned to Griphook. Vault 713 now, please. And can we go more slowly? Only one speed only, said Griphook. They were going deeper now, gathering speed. The air became colder and colder as they hurtled round tight corners. They went rattling over an underground ravine, and Harry leant over the side to try and see what was down at the dark bottom, but Hagrid groaned and pulled him back by the scruffs of his neck. Vault 713 had no keyhole. Stand back, said Griphook. Importantly, he stroked the door with one of his long fingers, and it simply melted away. If anyone but a Gringotts goblin tried that, they'd be sucked through the door and trapped in there, said Griphook. Oh, they did it in the wrong voice. How often do you check to see if anyone's inside? Asked Harry. About once every 10 years, said Griphook with a really nasty grin. Something extraordinary had to be inside this top security vault. Harry was sure. He leaned forward, evilly expecting to see fabulous jewels at the very least. But at first he thought it was empty. There was nothing but a grubby little package wrapped in a brown paper bag lying on the floor. Hagrid picked it up, tucked it deep inside his coat. Harry longed to know what it was, but he knew better than to ask. Come on, back in that infernal cart, and don't talk to me on the way back. It's best if I keep my mouth shut, said Hagrid. One wild cart ride later, and they stood in the blinking sunlight outside Gringotts. Harry didn't know where to run first now he had a bag full of money. He didn't have to know how many gallons there were to a pound to know that he had holding more money in his life than he ever had held before. More money than Dudley had ever had. Might as well get your uniform, said Hagrid, nodding towards Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions. Listen, Harry, would you mind if I slipped off for a pick-me-up at the leaky cauldron? I hate those Gringotts carts. He did still look a bit sick, so Harry entered Madame Malkin's shop alone, feeling nervous. Madame Malkin was a squat, smiling witch, dressed all in mauve. Hogwarts, my dear, she said, when Harry started to speak. Got the lot here. Another young man being fitted up now, in fact. And I'm going to finish there. So we've done quite a long one today. It's coming on 20 minutes just to sort of make up for the other one. So Harry's going to start meeting characters, and his Diagonal Alley is a really long chapter because we've still not finished it, okay? Alright, so make sure you write a summary of what's happened, and we will pick up next week. Bye, guys.